They say the desert remembers, but it doesn't forgive. And now it rises. In the ashes of a forgotten empire, voices once buried in sand have begun to shout. Kael Vos, the man from another time, stands at the edge of rebellion, haunted by futures that refuse to die. As alien machines stir beneath the dunes and ancient timelines fracture, one truth becomes clear. This is not just a war for survival. It's a war for who controls the story of humanity. The wind howled across the salt-scarred dunes, carrying the whispers of revolt. Kael stood beneath the cracked sky, his robe heavy with dust and grief. In his hands, the shattered lens of his chrono-beacon pulsed weakly, his last connection to time's fractured web. What he saw last through that lens haunted him. A flash of burning twin suns, a world consumed by war, and a crimson banner rising in the storm. The prophecy had not lied, but it had not told the whole truth either. The Sentinel's reawakening had not brought unity. It had brought fear. And from fear, division. The desert tribes, once scattered and voiceless, had seen Kael's emergence from the sands as a sign. Not all believed the same story. Some hailed him as the dust-born savior. Others called him the echo of collapse. Yet, in their arguments, one voice began to rise, a woman's voice. Commander Syra Vex, a scarred veteran of the Outer Dust Wars. Syra stood atop a ruined crawler platform in the oasis city of Tharnax, her voice cutting through the noise like obsidian. No more waiting for salvation. No more timelines written by gods and ghosts. We fight because the sand is ours, and no prophecy will chain us again. Kael watched from the shadows, uncertain whether to reveal himself. She spoke the words he had always feared, that the prophecy was a prison, not a path. That night, he approached her. "I've seen what's coming," he said, voice low. "The war will consume everything, unless we unify." She didn't flinch. Unify under who? You. No, under truth. She stared at him, eyes like storm glass. "Then you better start telling it." They sat by the fire, sharing truths. Kael spoke of the time vaults, the shrouded war between alien architects and humanity's forgotten ancestors. He told her the code embedded in the desert sands, a living history, written in decay and recursion. Syra listened. Then she laughed, bitter and quiet. "So we're fighting ghosts and riddles. Wonderful." "No," Kael said. "We're fighting ourselves." Days later, the rebellion began. It didn't start with bombs. It started with silence. Caravans stopped obeying the Dominion's orbital checkpoints. Ancient machines long buried were unearthed and reawakened. Saboteurs jammed the timeline sync relays that kept the past and future in balance. The Dominion sent messages, then warnings, then fire. But the desert had learned to burn. Kael rode beside Syra now, his role no longer neutral. He wasn't a scholar anymore. He was a symbol. At night, he dreamed of broken futures, timelines where Syra was executed in the Dust Plaza, where the rebellion fell before it even began, where the twin suns blinked out. Each morning, he woke heavier. "Dream again?" she asked one dawn, tightening her arm plate. "Too many," he replied. "You're not a prophet, Kael. You're a man. Make your own future." In the ruins of Alcrith, the first battle began. The Dominion deployed phase walkers, soldiers wrapped in chrono shields, skipping milliseconds in and out of the present. Syra's rebels fought with grit and gravity mines, using the terrain to drag time back into place. Kael, atop a canyon ledge, activated the lens of sands, a makeshift device crafted from his broken chrono beacon and desert crystals. It warped light, bending glimpses of possible outcomes. He saw Syra fall in 12 of them. He screamed her name across the battlefield. She ducked a plasma bolt just in time. One life saved, one timeline nudged. But elsewhere, the ground bled. Bodies dissolved into time echoes. Sandstorms swallowed voices whole. Victory was not a word they could use. Only survival. That night, they mourned. Not just the dead, but the futures lost. "I thought knowing time would help," Kael whispered. "But all I see are paths to pain." Syra poured a bitter drink into his cup. "Then walk one anyway. Walk the one that's worth bleeding for." He looked at her, scarred, stubborn, fierce, and saw not the desert's rebellion, but its heart. As dawn broke, the crows of dust circled above Tharnax. The Dominion's dreadnoughts had arrived in orbit. Their lights blinked like angry stars. Their message was clear: submit or vanish. Kael tightened his grip on the lens. No more running, he said. Syra nodded. We are the sand, and the sand never forgets. The desert doesn't forget, and neither do we. They thought time would bury our truth. But time is ours now, and we rise not for power, but for memory. The air trembled as Kael stood atop the obsidian ridge, overlooking the Reclaimer camp. Smoke drifted from the scorched dunes where battles had erupted just hours ago. But this was only the beginning. I found her, Rika said quietly, emerging from the shadows behind him. The seer, Kael turned. Alive? Barely, but she's coherent. She says the Chrono-Code isn't lost. It's incomplete. Inside the command tent, the seer lay on a bed of woven solar silk. Her face was lined, marked with temporal scars that glowed faintly. You are the one from the prophecy, she whispered, her voice brittle like dried sand. The veil of time responds to you, because it was written by you. Kael's breath caught. I don't understand. You will, she said, pressing a cracked crystal shard into his palm. This holds your forgotten memories, but it must be synced with the obsidian pillar before the eclipse. The eclipse? Rika frowned. That's only days away. Night fell like a silent judgment. Kael stared at the shard, its facets pulsing softly. What memories had he lost or erased? That night, the dreams returned. He stood in another timeline, wearing the robes of a time priest. Behind him, the pillar stood intact, surrounded by thousands. He was speaking, not in words, but pulses of energy. He saw Rika, but not as a rebel, as a leader of the regime, a friend turned enemy. Kael awoke gasping. The shard pulsed harder now, responding to something buried deep. The next morning, the Reclaimers mobilized. They had to reach the pillar before the eclipse, but the regime had anticipated them. On the horizon, skyships darkened the sun. They're early, Rika spat. They know. Kael turned to his people. This isn't a fight for victory. It's a fight for the right to remember. Every time they erase a truth, they erase a piece of us. The skyships descended like silent vultures. Plasma rounds began to strike the dunes, melting sand into glass. Kael and Rika ran toward the ruins of the pillar. At its base, ancient machines flickered alive. Kael inserted the shard. Time rippled. A surge of memories hit him like a storm. Every version of himself, the historian, the soldier, the traitor, the lover, collided. He fell to his knees, screaming. Rika knelt beside him, eyes wide. What did you see? Everything, Kael said hoarsely. I was part of the regime. I helped design the first Chrono War. I was the one who erased the first rebellion. I betrayed us. Then why are you here now? She asked. He met her gaze. Because I came back to fix it. Suddenly, the pillar began to vibrate. A deep hum echoed through the sands. The skyships stopped firing, and then descended. Kael stood. They see the signal. The pillar is broadcasting truth. From the ships, soldiers stepped down, but not to fight. They were crying. The rebellion didn't win by force. It won by memory. Later that night, Kael stood at the edge of the dunes, the shard now inert in his hand. We've changed this timeline, Rika said. But there are others. Kael nodded. The war is far from over. But for now, the desert forgives.